What's up, guys? It's Uncle Freedom. And yesterday I put out a video talking about a cool mail call I got, new pack from Everly Stock, new pack from Mystery Ranch, and a new knife. And doing some knife content on here, the first time I've done anything on the YouTube channel, reminded me of why knives are so important. There are very few things that we have as like a society that go through life with us, develop their own stories, and that's what makes those things so cool. I've never met a guy who's not that's into milsurp rifles that's not into the fact that holy shit, somebody carried this rifle on a battlefield, and what is this thing seen? We always hear phrases like a man of the walls of this old house could talk. That would be creepy, and we would be in Encanto. But for me, like, knives have always been one of those things, much like watches, right? Watches are one of those things you go through life with them, you carry them with you, they earn their scars, bumps, bruises, marks, and they tell a story. I can look at watches and tell you I was wearing that watch when my children were born, what I was doing when I got that weird scratch on the bezel, and it's kind of the same thing for knives. I'm a huge proponent of older knives. I love collecting old knives and trying to restore them, bring the blades back into working shape, because that's a tool that was made when people cared about tools and they needed things that worked. So for me, I distinctly remember growing up. I'm an older guy. I'm almost 40 years old. I grew up in the South. We carried knives all the time. It was not uncommon to see a kid at 5 years old that had a knife in his pocket or in his backpack when he went to kindergarten, because it just wasn't that out of place. It's something we had, much like guns in the gun rack in the back of your truck in the high school parking lot when you were 16 years old. It's just part of the equation. That is a society that we no longer have. But knives are one of those things that I know the love and care that was put into them by the person that had them. And it's made even more impactful when you get a knife that really meant something to somebody you care about. So one of my most prized possessions I own is actually this guy. This small, unassuming scout knife made by Western Cutlery belonged to my grandfather, my papa. Greatest man I ever knew. And when I graduated the law enforcement academy, my uncle dropped this off to me, and he was like, hey, yeah, I wanted you to have this. Now, my grandfather used his knives like most people did back in the day. They weren't just for show, and you didn't put them on a shelf. You used them. So this knife is scarred and beat up, but I did reprofile the edge and put a mirrored edge onto it. It is an absolute razor blade, and I'm honored to carry and use it to this day. But this is kind of the stuff you saw that you remembered from back in the day. It told a story. He did things with this. Maybe he fixed a car. Maybe he, pruned a tree. But it was that, he trusted it. And to me, that was always really cool. This thing has a story to tell, and I look forward to the day that I can give it to my kids. So in the vein of that, I have actually my first scout knife. So this knife is a case camp knife, a case scout knife, however you want to put it. This guy is from the mid 80s. I think I got this in like 1989. So I would have been 5 years old when I got it. Jig bone handles. If you can tell by the patina on the blade, this has seen its fair share of use and love. Still got pretty good walk and talk onto it. There are nicer knives, but this knife means a lot to me. And I can look at this and I'm instantly reminded of some of the cool stuff I did with it, or, making pointed sticks in the woods because that was all the rage, or cleaning a squirrel, or, trimming the strings off of hay bales. This was my knife. Now, I still carry this from time to time, but honestly, there were some companies that came out, say 7 years ago, that were getting pretty hot, and there were two big ones that were massive, and that was Northwoods and Great Eastern Cutlery. Those guys were making just amazing traditional folding knives. And in a world of things like this, there was still a place for those excellent traditional folding knives. And when I found this company, Great Eastern Cutlery, the first one I ever saw from them was the Hay and Helper. I think it was the Model 47. I was like, that one, that's cool. I like that. That's pretty badass. So I sought one out and I bought one. And back in the day, they were like $60. And I loved it. And they were 1095 steel. And I have some older ones now that were made in their original '01 tool steel. But over the time as knives were released, I found my favorite one from them, which was actually this guy. This is the Model 35. This is the calf and pin. And I think I've had this since 2017. And I've carried it pretty much every day since I got it. This knife had a couple of the features that I really thought was cool. So I've got this really cool flat screwdriver that is absolutely useless unless you live in an old house. So it's become much more useful for me now. And I had two blades on this guy. It's a true jackknife, opens on one end. And this blade on the back side here, you see it's got this really neat point. That is not just for show or to stab you in the hand when you're screwing around with it. That's called a one-arm jack. And the original one-handing opening knife was the one-arm jack. And that was because you could pull it out of your pocket and you could hook it on the belt loop or on your pocket and pull the knife open with your hand. Now, how did we come up with this design? Well, I think it was an accident one day. Because honestly, if I cover up this part, we have a clip point blade. So this is the one-arm jack. And this is the secondary blade on this knife. It's just an excellent, excellent knife. Sorry for the dogs screaming and hollering in the background. And then the main blade on this guy, which is really cool, and probably one of the features I thought was the neatest, was a worn clip blade. You don't see it much on traditional knives, but I absolutely love it. And you see this cool hump I've got right here? Well, that hump you see on there is actually a liner lock, which is just freaking outstanding for a traditional folding knife. I've had this knife since it got released. I've carried it all the time. I have 5 of these in different handle skull materials. My other favorite one has got to be the OD green linen micarta. I've got like a copper Alabama bead on it. It's pretty sweet. I carry this guy around in a leather case. Leather case is made by me, Uncle Freedom Leather, back in the day. Just a neat piece. Keeps my knife safe and secure and rides around with me. So those knives tell stories, right? That's what we do. And we all come into knives in our own way. And one of the ways that, like, I got into knives, I was a huge Stallone fan. So when Cliffhanger came out, I mean, what's more badass than Stallone climbing mountains? Well, maybe Stallone going into Vietnam and rescuing people. That was also pretty cool. But that movie, Cliffhanger, was pretty cool. And one of the knives featured in that movie was a Spyderco. Well, that was different. Holy shit, that was wild, right? You had a one-handed opening knife with a clip on it, all this crazy stuff, right? Pretty badass. So, I had to have some Spyderco, and I've had a lot of Spydercos over the years, and probably one of my favorite ones is the Endura line. So this is the Endura 4. I've had this knife for going on 10 years now. It's a Japanese knife, VG10 steel, 3 3/4 inch blade. Love that beautiful thumb ramp, that excellent Spidey hole, the boil dent lock back, the FRN handles with bidirectional texturing. You know, it's a bunch of knife jargon for the fact that it is an excellent knife that has just been absolutely reliable over the years. And back when I bought this one, I think you could pick these up for $62. Now, good luck doing that now. These are about $100 because times have changed and things are different. But having that Spidey hole is really cool to me. And then I found my next knife I just had to have, right? And that was the Benchmade Griptilian. This is the 550 HG. So when we look at the 550 HG, I've got that Spidey hole, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, patent infringement." No, actually, Sal licensed them to use the hole. This was a Mel Pardue design. Back before these were made out of S30V, this is made out of 154 CM, which was powdered metallurgy and what is considered now by just to be a standard steel. Back in the day, this was a super steel. Holds an edge great. Not as good as some. Easy to resharpen, which brings me to a point that people need to take in mind when you think about knives, which is Elmax and CPM M4 and Crewware and MagnaCut, and you know, all those are great. They are. You will never actually use the full extent of that knife blade breaking down cardboard boxes at your minimum wage job. It's just not going to happen. Though it is really cool to break down your boxes with a $300 folding knife. That said, there is a trade-off for things like M4 that are damn near indestructible. Like, unless you do something really stupid, you're not going to hurt the blade. It also takes forever to resharpen it. So, in that vein, you look at things like these survival knives. Like, I've got a CPM M3V survival knife that I absolutely love and adore. I will tell you, though, that if I actually dull that in the field, which is highly unlikely, but it could happen, and let's say it's a bug-out situation, and I damage the blade, I hope to God I brought 6-inch bench stones with me, because unless I'm planning on being there for the next 7 to 12 days to sharpen that knife again, it's not going to happen. And I'm really good at sharpening knives. So there is a trade-off for that. Really good durability, really good wear resistance means that when you actually do have to resharpen it, you better have some cleared time on your schedule to make that shit work and prepare to be frustrated and buy diamond stones. So back in the day, this knife, this was the Axis lock. It was something that only Benchmade had. And it was just, I mean, the fun factor is there. I mean, you could just, and then we add like the Spidey hole to it. So now we can Spidey flick the damn thing. You know, we can, yeah, all kinds of fun. Awesome knife. And then I got introduced to Emerson. Now, Emerson was expensive in a world of knives that were pretty expensive back in the day. Back in the day, if you spent $200 on a knife, you were getting something pretty badass, like M4 steel or M390 or LMAX or something like that. You were getting USA made with the best materials and titanium and all this crazy shit. And then you entered Emerson, who was like, I'm going to give you 154 CM with titanium liner locks, and you're going to be happy about it because I make cool shit. And he was not wrong. He made really cool shit. I've owned a ton of Emersons over the day. I still own a bunch of Emersons now, but probably the two I own are on this table that I love the most. And the first one is the Emerson CQC 7V. So it's like a short knife, 3 1/4 inch blade, 154 CM. This has actually got the V grind profile to it. It makes it a lot easier to sharpen. You don't have the standard chisel grind. And as you can tell by the wear on this guy, it's been used. Ergonomics are rock solid. Kind of what made Emerson famous is his wave back here, which he actually designed as a knife catch back in the day in case you got into a knife fight. But they realized when you took it out of your pockets, it opened the knife, which probably scared the shit out of them, according to people. And actually, the first time I met Ernie Emerson in 2017, this is the knife I had in my hand when I took a picture with him. It is a fantastic blade. It's kind of a no-nonsense tool knife. Although I will say, if you're an Emerson fan, you will know that that titanium liner wears faster than steel, so you will have to send this guy in, depending on how much you carry it, to have the liners replaced, and that is not a covered part of the warranty. It's going to cost you some money to get it done, but it's kind of the price you pay to do it. Going in from there, I loved Emerson's designs, right? So then I found this guy, the 0620 from Zero Tolerance. So now I have big, thick slab titanium frame lock, hardened steel insert to make sure that it didn't fucking wear out. Awesome G10, big industrial bolt pivot. Sexy, right? Then we added into like super steel. So now I've got LMAX steel, which is basically stainless D2. I've got that Emerson wave, but if you can tell by the deployment, a much smoother, snappier blade, USA made, 0.16 inches thick, basically a Emerson E-Tac, but burly. And I love this blade, 3.6 inches long, probably one of my favorite knives I've ever owned. I only regret is that I never got the 630. I wish I could have, and these are all discontinued, sadly. But I wouldn't trade this knife for the world. It'll always be a part of my collection, and I'll pass it on to my kids. But from that knife, one hard use folder to another, there's always another knife I had to have, and that was the Benchmade 810 Contego. So these were an Osborne design reverse Tonto. I mean, who doesn't like that freaking profile? That's sexy. Probably some of the most evilly sculpted G10 scales that will absolutely destroy your pants, because that's a part of the equation. Awesome deep carry pocket clip, carbide glass breaker on the end if you find yourself needing to do that. That awesome axis lock, 0.16 inches thick CPM M4. Remember what I said, it's going to hold an edge forever, but when you got to sharpen it, you better clear your schedule. Just, I mean, come on, guys. That infinitely playable. Just super smooth. Love this knife. Had it forever. We'll never get rid of it. Probably one of my favorite knives and knife designs ever. This is the big giant brother to the 940 Osborne, that super sexy, slim, green anodized handle version. They make a bunch of versions now, but I've had this guy going on 10 years, and I absolutely adore it. So then that brings me on to going to Blade Show in 2018, and I was always wanted a Microtech. I had a friend by the name of Jason who was a huge Microtech guy. We were all walking around Blade Show together, and I happened to find myself at the Microtech booth when they were releasing the next small batch of the SOCOM Elite knife. Back in the day, those were hard to get. It turns out they're still very hard to get. Back in the day, they were $280. They're more than that now. They're made out of some of the best steel you can get on the market, and they are a no-nonsense, go-F-yourself tool knife. And I got one because, I mean, why wouldn't you? I'm standing at the table, and they're like, we got one left. And I'm like, well, of course you do. That's because it belongs to me, and you've been holding it. This thing is absolutely smooth. This is a honking monster of a knife. This damn thing is almost 1/5 of an inch thick, so 0.192 inches thick. Bowler M390, so a super steel from hell. 4-inch long blade that will absolutely wreck your shit if you're not careful. But other than that, we're looking pretty standard. We got 60-61 aluminums. We have a hardened liner lock on the inside that is replaceable if you ever wear it out. Tip down only carry, which is kind of frustrating for some people. But I will tell you what, holy shit. I bought this knife in 2018, so that would be 5 years ago this June. This was made in May of that year. I have carried it a lot. And I have never taken it apart and cleaned it, and it is still one of the smoothest, sexiest knives I own. That is the Microtech SOCOM Elite. Um, yeah, that thing's just badass. If you want instant cred from a knife guy, be like, I carry a SOCOM. That'll do it. And that brings me to probably one of my favorite knives, and a knife that means a lot to me. And the reason being is the gentleman that gave me this knife, we lost a great human being this year. He lost a battle he'd been having with cancer, and that's terrible. And for those of you that knew me before, like my good friend Metals Etched, who's popped up in the comments sometimes, Johnny was a great guy. Johnny was a huge Emerson knife collector. He was one of the people I went to when I had questions. And back in the day, I was nicknamed Uncle Freedom, as Uncle Sam's pissed off, more patriotic brother. And believe it or not, I didn't give myself that name, and thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people lined up every single week to watch my live feed, which was kind of an accomplishment back in the day. But as I got into Emerson knives, there was a knife that always stood out to me, and it was called the Patriot, because I was a patriotic human being, and I thought I needed that. They were ultra expensive, though. $260 in like 2017 money, so not today's money. Closer to $300 now. I don't even think they're still made. But what did you get for that? You got G10 scales, a titanium liner lock, and 154 cm steel. It was an eighth of an inch thick. You didn't get anything super special, but it was an Emerson. It was called the Patriot by one of the most patriotic knife makers ever, and given to me by one of the most patriotic human beings I ever knew, out of the goodness of his heart, because he felt I needed it. And that was the Emerson Patriot. This is a big honking knife, 3.9 inch blade. We're looking at over 9 inches in overall length, 154 cm steel. The V grind, so not the standard chisel grind from them. Love that absolute blade shape. The ergonomics on this knife are second to none. It's just in there. He had it brand new, gave it to me brand new. I carried it some, but I love and adore this knife, so I don't carry it as much. I have the 9mm thumb disc on here, for those of you that know. I do not have my Order of the Black Shamrock on there. I probably should. I have my We the People pocket clip, which seems to be something I put on literally every Emerson knife I own, because why wouldn't you? But this knife is just smooth, sexy, awesome, big, patriotic, and American, just like me. Except for the whole sexy and awesome part. That would be weird. Still got that standard blade, on the wave feature on the back. This is probably one of the coolest knives I've ever known. And one of the things I really always thought was neat about Emerson is how utilitarian he designs his knives. So we've got 154 cm steel, not because it's cheap, but because I can sharpen it on damn near anything. And instead of using, Torx bits or whatever, what did Emerson use? Well, Emerson used, flathead screws and Phillips head screws. Yep, because why are we going to make this shit any more complicated than we got to? Because these were tools made to be used by people in the field. The slogan for this company was famous in the worst places, and I am proud to own and like some of the Emerson knives. They don't know who I am. I've met Ernie Emerson a few times. He's a solid dude. I would not pick a fight with him. And he makes some of the coolest hard-use tools on the market. Let's be real, is this as sexy as that? Not really, no. But it doesn't have to be, because what this does is what it does, and it's got one of the best stories I know from one of the better human beings I ever met in this everyday carry world. So, what's your favorite knife? What's one that's got a story that you want to share? What got you into this? And what do you hope to pass on to your kids? My kids I already have their first Swiss Army knives ready for them to go. So it's important to pass those things on, and to teach them how to use things, and to have them, and to build those memories and those stories, and give them something that they can look back on, much the way that I look back on these two knives. And I think about what my papa did with this, and I think about some of the dumb stuff and some of the cool stuff I did with mine. They're not just objects. You carry them through life, and you create your own stories with them. So that's what's kind of cool about this. So what's your favorite one? Give me one of your stories, one of your favorite knives. What got you into knives to begin with? Got any questions, comments, concerns? Holler at me. I'll see what I can do to help you. I have now learned why YouTubers say this, but like 98% of the people that watch, the thousands of people that watch my videos, only 98%, like 2% of them are actually subscribed to my channel, which is freaking wild. Fun fact, you don't actually have to watch them if you subscribe. I would appreciate it if you subscribe. And I upload 1 to 3 times a week, depending on how I'm feeling. There you go, guys. So like, subscribe, tell a friend. The channel is growing and it's fun. So until next time, guys, I'm Uncle Freedom. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and I'll see you soon.